So we want to talk about budgeting. And I will say this, when I put this together, I was thinking a lot about some of the pitfalls I went through, and then I've got two particular people that work for me that are mid to late 20s, and I sat down and picked their brain and said, what's some of the stuff, if you were sitting there in this, what do you want to know about? I will say, though, that with every generation, I'm a Gen Xer. When we were coming up, everybody said we're lazy, we do nothing but play video games, we've always had everything handed to us. Does that sound familiar to any millennials in here? But this week they came out with a study, or they published the results of a study, and they looked at all of the generations that are currently in the workforce. So you're mainly talking about the end of the baby boomers, mainly Gen X, and then the millennials. And of those three groups, in terms of percentages, millennials are saving the most. So go ahead and give yourself a round of applause for that. I think some of you are listening to some of the stuff we're saying. I will say there's a little bit of a selection bias in that because they only looked at millennials in the workforce, which we all know, and there's Gen X, we were the same way, but millennials are known for pushing off employment a little bit later, and so they only looked at the ones that were in the workforce, but of the ones that were in the workforce compared to the other generations, you guys were saving the most, so good job. Probably helps if this thing's on. So we'll start off, a good friend of mine, I was having a conversation with him once, and he's a pharmacist in Gulf Breeze, and he said, you know, they always told us when we were in school that if you live like a pharmacist while you're a student, you will live like a student when you're a pharmacist. And that goes for anything, really. You know, you could say doctor, or you could say, you know, banker. The point is, you kind of want to look at your source of income in whatever life stage you're in, look at your income, and make sure that your expenses fit that income, and you leave some room to save. A couple of things to start out, and this, again, was taken a couple of years ago, well, about in the last 12 to 18 months, but the numbers I went back and checked are very relevant still today. So there are approximately 2,500 universities, four-year institutions in America. That means that there are approximately 1.5 million bachelor's degrees awarded each year. That means 150,000 new job seekers per year were in the top 10 in their class, or top 10% in their class. So it's 150,000 people a year that were the cream of the crop. Even last month's new unemployment claim numbers came in at 265,000, and this month it's supposed to be the same, the survey projections. So 270,000 new people looking for jobs each month. And if you read the news, unemployment's down, the economy's getting better. So at the height of the recession in 2008, this number was 350,000, over 400,000 a month at certain times. Then we have 3 of the top 10 largest universities are located in the state of Florida. Any guesses?
Florida State.
Not Florida State. Florida's one of them. Central Florida's one of them, and FIU. UCF's number 2, University of Florida number 7, and FIU number 8. And you can probably throw Florida State, I mean, they're up there. So my point is, and even in this area, you've got, within a few miles, a few hours drive, you've got the schools over New Orleans to Tuscaloosa to Auburn. So we're kind of in a hotbed of graduating students. In terms of, and when I say largest, I mean we're talking about undergrad enrollment. So that's a lot of people out looking for jobs all at the same time. So we want to make sure we get this right the first time. So hopefully from this you'll understand how to prioritize budget line items, why it's important to be credit card smart, not credit card averse, but credit card smart. Be smart with your credit card, and to start saving for retirement now. We're going to go through a couple scenarios and give you some real life examples. So the first one we're talking about a 22-year-old recent college grad with $25,000 in student loan debt, nothing on a credit card, and recently hired to a first professional job at $36,000 a year. So when we start with a budget, like I said before, where's the first place we start? Our income. Income's the first place you want to start because we got to know how much to budget for. So $36,000 a year is $3,000 a month gross. That's before anybody else has their hand in the pot. Insurance and FSA, $150 a month. Now, what an FSA is, you might have heard the term HSA or FSA. It's flexible spending account, or an HSA is a health savings account. Basically what that is your employer, or you, sorry, not your employer, you put money into account before it's taxed, and you have the ability to spend that money on health care. For an FSA, you can go to the doctor, the dentist, vision care, mental health care, things like that, whereas that's an FSA, whereas an HSA, you can only spend it on health care related stuff. The main thing that you can't do with an HSA is the dentist. But other than that, it's pretty much all the same. But it allows you to say, hey, I've got this insurance with a $2,000 deductible. That means the first $2,000 spent will come out of my pocket. And I'm paying for this insurance every month. What this allows you to do is put $500 or up to $2,000 into this account before it's taxed. It lowers your taxable income, and you're not paying income tax on that money and then turn around and paying sales tax on it at the doctor's office. So it allows you to use tax-free money to pay for things like health care, dentistry, things like that. 401k, this is your retirement savings. The $150 a month I came up with is 5%. Obviously, if you can do more, great, do more. The reason I use 5% is because most top-end 401k plans, the employer will match you up to 6%. Some of them, the best ones, will match you dollar for dollar. Some of them will match you 75 cents on the dollar. So if you put $6,000 in it, they'll put $4,500 in it. But 5%, again, when you're first starting out, $36,000 a year, 5%, if you can swing that, then you're doing good. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later and why it's important. And then Uncle Sam's got to get his share. Notice he's taken the most out of all these. And I say Uncle Sam because, whoops, don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. The reason I say Uncle Sam is because this is just federal taxes. And I read a note here, unless you live in Alaska, Florida, Nevada, South Dakota, Texas, Washington, Wyoming, New Hampshire, or Tennessee, you will pay state taxes. That means if you get a job working in Alabama, you're going to be paying the $550, probably plus another $150 to $200 a month in taxes. So it benefits you to live in one of these, lower cost of living. That's why, one of the reasons I chose the state of Florida. No state income tax, but it's a great thing, take advantage of it. So now let's look at our expenses. I listed some expenses on here in no particular order of importance because I want you to think about this. I mean, we all have most of these expenses in our life. Maybe not all of us child care, but we'll talk about that. What do you see up here? Where do we start? What's the most important one? What's the first line item that you want to look at when you're making a budget?
Your housing and your car. Well,
All good choices, and we're going to get to those. So let's look at something that you have no ability to lower or to not pay. Your debt, your student loan debt. You don't have your choice. If you have student loan debt, and I even talked with Dr. O'Keefe last time I was here, and he said, it's amazingly, remember I said in this example, $25,000 in student debt, and he said, looking back, wasn't it 24 was about the average? So trust me, I've heard the war stories and the horror stories of people graduating with $100,000 in debt, and they're not doctors. So $25,000 is about normal, and these days student debt is just a way of life. It's just accept it. And as lenders, as bankers, we're having to accept it when we lend money to, especially millennials. But your debt's the first thing you're going to have to pay. You don't have a choice. And I put $300 a month on there. It could be as high as $400, depending on how much your student debt is. At $25,000, that's a good number. And we said at this point, no credit card debt. So what's the next thing? I heard someone say your automobile, transportation. You're now in a career. Under this example, we're assuming you've used your degree. You've made it into what we all refer to as the real world. And now you've got to be reliable, on time, and dependable. You're going to have transportation. So if you got a car that works today and doesn't need any major mechanical repairs, good, keep it. You can upgrade later. But I put $225 for a car. And where I got that number is $11,500 financed for 60 months at 3.99. I said $11,500. Is that going to buy you a brand new 2016 Mercedes? No. It's going to buy you a brand new 2008 Honda Accord. But my point is, at this point in time, you need to be focused more on saving and the more important stuff. And I've actually, not to get off topic for a little bit, but have you ever heard of, there's about 5 to 10 years ago, there was a big series going on called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. One of the big, and it compares two neighbors living to each other, one's rich and one's poor, and their lifestyles and their decisions and their choices. And one of the main things they said in there was that, you don't put money into a depreciable asset. Don't pour money into the minute you drive off the car lot, that it becomes a depreciable asset. It will never be worth more than the day you purchase it. So, anyway, we've got to have reliable transportation. Not only that, we've got to have insurance and gas for it. Couple things. On the gas, that's 4 tanks a month at $40 a tank. Well, like I said, I put this together about 18 months ago when gas was almost $3 a gallon, now at $2 a gallon. So that we might shave some money off that. Let's call it $115, $120 a month. But my point is, you got to have gas, you got to have a car, and you got to have insurance. The law requires it. One note I put on here, $100 a month. That's about right for car insurance. The guys in the room, sorry, you might have to pay a little bit more. The ladies, you're going to get a break. And until you have kids, or until you're married or turn 30. And then we all kind of fall into the same category. Another thing I put on there, renter's insurance. If you're renting, it's like $8-10 a month, and it's the best $10 you'll ever spend, so I would highly recommend it. So $100 for insurance. So the next on the list, groceries. We got to eat, right? Well, where'd you come up with that $380? Oh, that sounds like a lot for the month. Yeah, that's approximately $12.50 per day, not per meal, per day. That means you're not going to be having a whole lot of meals at McGuire's. Save that for when, somebody else is paying. $12.50 a day. Think about that. I mean, that means you're going to have to shop very frugally at the grocery store. Sam's Club. Hey, Publix takes anybody's coupons. What's next on the list? Water and sewer, $35 a month. Yeah, I would not suggest you be like my wife and only take a shower once a week. So just to save water, go ahead, smell good while you're at work. What do we have on there next? Okay, electric, $100 a month. And electricity is expensive, especially around here in the summer when it's 150 degrees outside. $100 a month is doable in a smaller unit. However, you better be comfortable with having the thermostat on 80 degrees during the summer.
With AC, I only spend about 180.
Yeah. And obviously the bigger the house or apartment, the more you're going to spend. But whenever I can get away with it, when I leave the house in the morning, I turn there up to about 78. Turn it back down when I get there at night. Sometimes someone goes behind me and changes the settings, but I'm trying to do my part, right? But $100 a month, if you're in a smaller 1,200 square foot unit, whether that be a house or an apartment or condo, whatever, you can get by with that. Next on the list, cell phone, $65 a month. That's not Verizon or AT&T. You can't afford Verizon or AT&T. That is T-Mobile. I looked it up. T-Mobile is your friend. $65 a month. And all the data that you need to have. Nobody needs 1 billion gigabytes of data a month. Next, internet, $35 a month. That is doable. Again, you don't have UVerse. I looked it up. CenturyLink is offering $35 a month. It is not a billion gigahertz speed, but it will get you by. And we all know, yes, you do probably need internet. Cable TV is a luxury that you cannot afford at this point in time. With that internet, $8 a month gets you some Netflix, Hulu. A lot of people have Amazon Prime. You can watch TV shows there. It is doable. Heck, you can even get like 3 or 4, 5, 8 channels with a digital rabbit ears these days. What's next? Gym. Unless your employer pays for it, it's going to be lumped in with our next item, entertainment. So, hiking is free. You can't afford a gym, you can't afford entertainment. Let's combine the two into free. But I also said the beach, although it's $1 to get out there, the beach is free, frisbee golf is free. Those are just a few activities that I wrote down that are free. And we'll go back to childcare. At this point in time, fresh out of college, probably maybe early to mid-20s, what do you need with a child? They're expensive. Anybody has one in here, you know they're expensive. And that is me joking. I'm not saying don't go have kids, but just realize that if you have a budget for them, they are expensive. And finally, savings. Well, why did I say 50? Well, you'll see it fits nicely into the income. $50, that's not going to make you rich overnight, but what this is an emergency savings. I already talked about the retirement savings in the 401k that comes out of your paycheck before you even see the money. Inevitably, no matter what stage you are in life, what you have, as soon as you feel comfortable, like, man, everything's going great, nothing can go wrong, something will happen that will require some emergency funds. So this $50 a month, do that for a year, and you've got, $600 saved up in case the water heater breaks, or, that's if you're an owner. If you're renting, call the landlord. But what if your car breaks down? What if you lose a timing belt or something like that? Something's always going to happen. Maybe you have to go to the emergency room because, you fell downstairs and broke your arm. So we always want to start trying to build up an emergency savings, and that's what this is. Then finally, before I put that number up there again, housing I come to last because some of this other stuff is important that you need to work into your budget, but if you start with housing, I got $3,000 a month, I'm going to go get me a $2,000 a month apartment. That's one of the easiest things to work with. That expense is one of the easiest ones to tweak. And I go back to the car at this point because if you've got some of these other things, if you've got child care that you need to pay for, you can cut into some of these other line items. You cannot cut into your school debt because whoever lends you the money, whether it's the government or a bank, they're not going to allow you to just come in and say, oh yeah, I'm just going to pay you $100 this month. You could start trimming the fat, so to speak, other places. Maybe you can't afford an internet connection. But that leaves $700 with this budget, that leaves $700 a month for housing. And originally I said, you know what, if you're renting, there's not a whole lot that you can find for that. There's options. You can get a $700 or cheaper a month apartment. Maybe you go at a $1,200 a month apartment and have a roommate. That's not unheard of. But I did talk to, ironically, someone that works for me, and I asked her about her situation, and she owns her own house. And for $700 a month, you can finance $100,000 for 30 years at 4.5%, which is very doable right now. The biggest obstacle someone in your shoes is going to face getting a mortgage on a house will be the down payment, the closing costs. There are some associated expenses up front. There are few and far between. Used to, it was everybody would lend you 100% of the value of the house and then give you money for closing costs. A lot of that changed in the housing crisis or the financial crisis of 2008 to 2010. This is the topic that really Philip is going to get into next, so we're going to let him discuss this more in depth. But my point is, $700 a month, you can afford to pay a mortgage. So when I was in your shoes, I thought, mortgages are $2,000 a month. There's no way I can ever afford a mortgage until I went and actually talked to someone who knew what they were talking about, unlike myself at the time. And they said, no, $800, $900, $1,000 a month, $700 a month, you can definitely get a mortgage. We're going to have to work and find ways to get you the money up front, the down payment, things like that. Because most of them will require at least something, whether it be 5, 10%. There are different programs for first home buyers. Again, I'll let Phil talk about that. So that gets us right at the $2,150 in income we had. So we have no budget wiggle room, so to speak. And again, that's why I plugged in the $50 in savings. I mean, the important thing here is that we are saving. And am I saying go home and make this your budget? No. I mean, the point is we went through this process of identifying what we need to cover first and how much is going to be left for some of the other things. You know, the first fat to be trimmed, so to speak, is going to be your entertainment, things like your gym, luxury items like cable TV. This just puts it into a graphical percentage-wise. So, and honestly, when I did this, I put this together first, and then I said, let's see how these percentages match up. And most people will tell you, the textbooks will tell you that 34% on housing is about the max you should spend on your, whatever your income is, about 33%, third of it on housing. And the rest of this stuff kind of flows through correctly. Let's talk about credit cards for a little bit. Now, again, I said not credit card averse, but let's be smart with our credit cards, and everyone should have one. But you can see right here, buying lattes and pizza can quickly add up if you're charging those on a credit card. And remember, when we go back here, you don't have any extra money to pay for a credit card. Well, credit card, you're paying for what you spent yesterday. You're paying today for what you spent yesterday. So we don't have any extra money left over to be paying off our credit cards. So let's say $2,100 a year over 5 years. You can see how this is easily, you're now at $10,000 in credit card debt. And what does that do to you? Well, if you get a bill from your credit card payment, it's going to have a minimum monthly payment on it. That's the minimum amount you have to pay. Basically, you're paying the amount of interest that you owe plus a slight little bit of the principal. So on $10,000 at 14%, your minimum monthly payment is $120 a month. That's going to take you almost 26 years to pay off, and over $37,000 is what you'll pay for it. So that $10,000, you're going to be paying $27,000 in interest expense. Think about that. That could buy you a nice car. Let's say we double that. And then a little bit, $250 a month, still going to take you almost 5 years to pay it off, and you're going to pay $3,500 in interest. And double that to $500 a month, you can pay it off in about 2 years, still paying almost $1,500 in interest. So the point is, we don't want to be paying $37,000 for pizza and lattes. But there are certain extenuating circumstances that require a credit card. I mean, I used the example 2 years ago now. It's hard to believe it was 2 years ago. But 2 years ago on April 4th, we had a huge flood. It rained seemed like 40 days and 40 nights and flooded the entire city of Pensacola. A lot of people had flood damage. A lot of people that weren't in flood zones had flood damage. That's the type of situation. A medical emergency. Those are the type of situations that you should have a credit card on hand. Nothing worse than having to go to the emergency room and saying, I don't even have a credit card to pay for this, and I don't know how I'm going to pay for this cast that you're going to put on my broken arm, because trust me, you go to the emergency room for a cough and you're going to come out of there owing $500. So we want to build up that emergency fund with the $50 in savings, and then have a credit card on hand just in case something happens. The example I used was in that flood, part of my roof got blown off and was leaking and flooding my house. I didn't have a choice. I had to get somebody out there to fix that the next day. And so I didn't have the extra cash at the time sitting around because I just bought the house. And so I had to put home repairs on a credit card. Then my wife and I, we not struggled, but we cut corners on entertainment and stuff like that for about 6 months till we can get it paid off. Just a real world example. Things do happen. So I say you only need one credit card. However, another one of the presentations in this series will be on credit. and we talk about credit cards. If you do have more than one, don't just run out and cut it off and have it canceled, because that greatly affects your credit. But again, we'll talk about that at another time. Define what your emergency use is and stick to it. Again, each person's definition of emergency will be different, but just have a plan in place. That doesn't mean emergency is not paying for shots of tequila for your girlfriends at the bar on Friday night. Understand the terms of your credit card. Basically, a lot of credit cards advertise, we'll give you, $10 back for every dollar you spend. And you can fly to China and back on $1,000 if you spent this credit card. Well, they're really good deals, and a lot of them do have miles and points and cash back and all this, but a lot of them charge you a $50 fee every year. So you kind of have to balance the good with the bad. If you're not going to use the credit card, why are you paying a $50 fee every year to accumulate the most points you can possibly accumulate? And when you do have a balance, pay more than the minimum payment. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to hit. Okay, we're going to run through another scenario real fast. I know I'm getting close to being out of time, but I just want to show you, let's say we've progressed now 10 years into this situation. Now this individual is married, but the partner does not work. They've accumulated the $10,000 in credit card debt. The student debt's paid off. They got one child, and they've now progressed professionally and now earning $70,000 a year, which is a great income. But the point of this is to show if you've saddled yourself with debt while you were younger, your quality of life is really, and your quality of living, your standard of living is really not changed much, because you're still paying for what you spent 5 years ago. So again, we start with income. $70,000 a year is right under $6,000 a month. Insurance doubled and then some, because now you're paying for a family insurance and not just a single. The 401k, we have upped that to 10% because now again, you're paying for the retirement for 2-3 people. You've got more of a family to cover, and you're catching up for some of the early years that you may not have put money into it. Uncle Sam wants his taxes again, unless you live in Alaska, Florida, Nevada, South Dakota, Texas, Washington, Wyoming, New Hampshire, or Tennessee. We can add another now $400 or $500 onto that. And you've got almost $4,000 a month. So you've almost doubled the income per month. But let's start looking at our expenses. So again, we start with our debt. Student loans are paid off. We don't owe anything. This time, remember we said we're going to work to try to get this debt paid off, this $10,000 that we owe on credit cards. So we're going to pay that $500 a month. We're going to bite the bullet, suck it up, and pay that $500 a month. Your car, well, $450 a month, don't think that that's a new Cadillac. That is 2 car payments of $225 each now. Because whether you're the wife that works and the stay-at-home husband or vice versa, that person's got to have a car to drive the kid around. Soccer practice. Where else, Lori? I mean, child care is they're going to give me trouble on the next few slides here. We'll see. Insurance, $130 a month. Well, we're now 32 years old, and 2 people now can have insurance on your auto for $130 a month. That's very doable. Your insurance rates will go down as time passes, especially if you don't have any claims, wrecks, things like that. Oh, transportation, gas. Again, I am basing that on $40 a tank at 7 tanks a month. That's going to be a little bit less at this point in time. However, give it a few years, we'll be back up to $3 a gallon. What's next on the list? Groceries, $625 a month. That is $20 per day now for 3 people. So about right under $6.50 a person, or a meal. Again, it's doable, but you're just going to have to shop at Sam's. Use coupons. Our CFO, one of the higher paid individuals at the credit union, I've never seen anybody use more coupons than him. He will go to Publix and come out of there, and they will owe him money. And it's just being smart. Water, sewer. Now we got 3 people taking a shower, hopefully every day. And electric, $200 a month. Well, we're in a bigger house. And again, we got to control that thermostat. And I jokingly say keep the thermostat on 80. Well, just keep in mind that if you keep it on 70 versus 75, that's another $30 a month you're paying for electricity. So if you can stand it, I've got a friend that just keeps his door and windows open all the time because he's not broke, he's just cheap. Cell phone, $125 a month. Now, we got 2 cell phones. You can't afford AT&T or Verizon. T-Mobile is your friend still. And why is that? Because we're paying $500 a month for a credit card. We can start to splurge on that thing whenever we get out of debt. Internet's still $35 a month, and now you can afford $70 a month in cable. Now, that's not going to get you all 800 channels. It's not going to get you UVerse 1250, but that may get you UVerse 200. You still can't go to the gym. Why are you going to the gym? You got a kid to take care of for. Here's where everybody's going to make fun of me. Child care, $400 a month. Remember, I said one child and the other person, the spouse, does not work. And food is included in groceries. So let's call this $800 a month. But if we do that, we're spending more than we're making. The point is, child care is a serious expense. And it's a serious line item on your budget. I would even argue that if you do have children, that line item is going to come first or second. I don't have kids, so I'm a little naive to the situation. As Lindsay is back there shaking her head. Entertainment, again, you have a kid. You don't have time for...
That's about double.
Yeah. And that's if both parents don't work. If you got you can't even get daycare for $400 a month. So, in this example, we only have one working spouse, so we'll go with it. You can write that on my comment card. $400 a month for childcare. Are you crazy? And then now we got $100 a month in savings. The point is still we got to save money, set some back for an emergency situation if I can't harp on it enough. Again, it always seems to me that as soon as I think, man, everything's great, my car's fine, I got a full tank of gas, I haven't been sick in 2 weeks, everything's going great. And then, bam, you get a flat tire or, whatever it may be, an emergency situation will creep up. It's always best if you got a little bit of savings instead of having to put it on a credit card. And now we got $1,000 a month in housing. We've moved up a little bit, and that, to give you an example, that is a $140,000 mortgage for 30 years at 4.5%. That is $700 a month in principal and interest and $300 a month in taxes and insurance. So that's a decent house. That gets us right at balancing our budget. That's why I plugged in $400 a month for child care. So again, look, now when you have a little bit more and you've got multiple people in the housing, we were able to cut our housing costs down to 25% of our budget. That's economies of scale a little bit. So the last thing I really want to talk about is contributing to your 401k and why it's important. I've laid out two different scenarios here. So let's start with this side. This person, the first person started contributing right out of college to their first job, age 22. They contribute for 10 years, from 22 to 32, and then they stop. Now, any finance or accounting majors in here? Time value of money. When you have money working for you, time is your friend. It is your best friend. So, for 10 years, we put in $100 a month and 9% return. I realize right now, if you go try to get 9% in the stock market, you're probably not going to do it. But over time, going back and historically looking back to the 20s, 9% rate of return, just keeping your money in the general market in mutual funds, is about the average. So 9% return, $100 a month for 10 years. which is $1,200 a year, $12,000. So over 10 years, you've put in $12,000 of your own money. At this 9%, at the age of 32, now you've contributed $12,000, but the interest earned on it, you're up to $18,000 lump sum at age 32, and then you let that $18,000, almost $19,000 compound interest until the age of 65. You're going to have $325,000 by just doing 10 years of contributing. This other example, this is the person that says right out of college, I can't afford to put that money into my retirement. I'm 22 years old. I've got 40 or 50 years to work. I'll worry about retirement later on. And they wait until they're 32. And now they're putting in $100 a month. And they've got to do it for 33 years until they can retire at the age of 65. And so they've contributed a total of almost $40,000. That's of their money versus $12,000. At that point in time, you've got $224,000. So by starting early and stopping, you've got almost $100,000 or more. Now imagine if you start early and continue. If you have $326,000, that compounds to the time you retire at 65. I ran the numbers, I don't remember, but it's pretty close to $1 million because of compound interest. So, I mean, you can retire and at that point, heck, you might can retire at 60. 59 and a half, you can start drawing on it without a penalty. I use 65 because that just is the number that they tell you to use. So, but my point is you're better off starting to contribute earlier and only contribute for 10 years than you are to wait 10 years and have to contribute for 33. And that's a point that I'm glad that when I read this study about millennials saving more, I think a lot of you guys are finally getting it, that my generation didn't. So finally, to kind of wrap things up, hold yourself accountable. You're only robbing your future self by not sticking to your budget. Now, do a reality check. Keep track of all your unplanned expenses, retail, entertainment, coffee, dining out. Do that for a week, and it'll be kind of eye-opening. Unless, of course, you're one of these people that's frugal, and then you're going to come back and say, I didn't spend anything. Look at you. You're an idiot. Understand the difference between need and want and why you're making the purchase. Do you want it? Do you need it? And there are plenty of budget apps. I use one on my phone. So I've got a budget app. And not only that, like a checkbook. Keeps up with my checkbook and savings and all that stuff. So, I mean, that's one of the good things about the newer technology. Finally, it's on there, but here's some more resources. For annual credit report, different blogs, and then these tools down here at the bottom for investments, retirement, and financially fit. We have a lot of good calculators there, and they're specific to auto loans or mortgages or, even should I rent versus buy. They're calculators. You put in the numbers, your situation, and it'll kind of go over some stuff. These are the calculators I used for all the numbers in my presentation. So just especially on the budget numbers, just to make sure that, hey, can you really afford a house for $700 a month? And went and looked at it, ran the numbers, and yeah, you can. I don't know how much time I have left, Lindsay.
Take some questions.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, some questions. But
What financial app do you use for budgeting?
let me look at it real fast. I couldn't tell you because I got it like 6 iPhones ago. It is called Accounts 2. And if I could show you what the icon's, this little blue thing down here with what looks like a Lyceum, I don't know, some Greek building. But it's really cool because you can even use your thumbprint to get into it. You don't have to put a code in. Yeah.
So could you necessarily put like investments in your budget? Like say if I wanted to, once I graduate, I wanted to put money in a CD. Mm-hmm. What if I can't? Would you say to put that in a budget or wait till around that time when you can afford it?
Well, the thing is what's important to you. yes, if you want to do that, put it in your budget now, but understand, especially, that's why I was saying that this is not the budget for everyone. If you want to do that, now, save that $50 a month till you get a couple hundred saved, and then put it in a CD. Or if you want $100 a month to go into a CD or some kind of investment initially, put that line item in there and understand you're going to have to trim other parts of your budget. Again, if you've got a car now that works that maybe is paid for, good. That's $225 a month you don't have to spend on a car payment. There's a lot of ways to save money. Some people say, one of the most important things to save money is to live close to where you work, to cut down your commute. I mean, then you're not going to be spending $160 a month on gas. You're going to be spending $50. So there's different ways. The numbers that I used, it would be hard to cut from your food budget because that was running kind of slim. And if you have children, it's going to be hard to say, hey, you're not going to eat today because I want to put some money into a CD. But, there are ways to you set down. A good way to do it is sit down like this. Okay, everything's balanced. And you say, okay, I need to fit something else in there for $100 a month. Where can I start trimming? Housing. And to be honest with you, that's why a lot of people your age that we still see living with their parents, they've had to cut housing out of their budget because the student debt is so burdensome that they're paying $700 a month. So, which is not a bad thing. I mean, heck, my parents, I'm 36, my parents would let me live at home, I would. Save me $1,500 a month or more. They wouldn't take my 2 dogs. But no, I mean, yes, if that's something that's important to you, you can find a way to work it into your budget. And the best thing is, like I said, start with what you have you're going to have to pay and get to where you're okay. I can't spend any more because I don't make any more. And figure out where you want to cut it from.
Would you categorize that as a want or a need?
It depends. Okay, if you're putting the money into your 401k, that's the best way you can, because especially if you're with an employer that matches you. And a lot of people I talk to that work for us. Now, I will say, I'll plug Panera real fast as an employer. We have one of the best 401k matching programs in the world. We match dollar for dollar up to 7% of what you contribute for the first 7 years. And then it's 8% for your 8th year, 9% for your 9th year, 10% for your 10th year every year after that. So people that have been there for 10 years, they can put 10% of their income. Panera will put 10%, match it, and now all of a sudden you're saving 20% of your income a year in a retirement fund. And that's free money. And so if they're going to match 7% and you're only contributing 5%, I tell people that are younger, I say, if you want to give yourself a raise, if you think you deserve a 2% raise this year, put 2% more into your 401k because Panera's going to pay you 2% more. So I would start there. Honestly, start with your 401k up to the point, max out what your employer is going to match. Okay? Then after that, if you still feel like you want a CD or something, that's when I say savings, that $50 a month that could be whatever. Once you save it, you can do whatever you want to with it. That was just kind of additional savings to catch all. But it's a good question. Anybody else?
I had a question, but you had a slide on the budget breakdown. That was one I asked. What are some of the habits that helped you when you first graduated college to get you grounded on a budget?
Honestly, I had to learn the hard way. I had to fall before, pick myself up before. I mean, I had some bad habits. My friends liked me because I was buying tequila at the bar on Friday night. That's why I use that as an example. But no, I mean, you go through some of those learning experiences. I never had someone sit down and tell me, hey, I worked my way through college, but I mean, it was like I was making, I was lucky if I made $10,000 in a year just because I was working part-time. I was focused more on college like you should be. But I was just having a little bit extra spending money. That's really all I wanted. So here I go. Look at my W-2. I'm making $10,000. Yeah. And then I go and I finally, after 100 interviews, get a job. They said, we're going to pay you $30,000 a year. I'm like, you're going to pay me what? Really? I mean, are you crazy or am I crazy? Did I just hear that? And at the time, I wasn't paying for my cell phone. My dad was. You know, I would put gas in my truck, but half the time, if he was there, he would fill it up, or my mom would buy me groceries. So it's really a slap in the face when you step out into the real world and you're having to pay for some of these things that you've never had to pay for before. You know, everybody's in different situations, but a good majority of us, you know, you're not used to paying an electricity bill. Paying for, you know, car insurance, health insurance. And those are going to take the spot in your budget over entertainment, eating out, which, you know, I was used to doing. That's what I had to pay. When I was in college and I worked, all I was doing was paying for my entertainment, really. Maybe a little bit of gas and things every now and then. But so that was the most important thing to me, you know, and then once you get kind of set out on your own, it's like, well, I've got all this other stuff that I've never had to pay for before, and now I don't have anything left to do what I'm used to doing. If you want to write down my email address, it is HECKJO, at penair.org.